more tariff pain. But this time, it's not from Trump. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
It's another blow for Western Canadian farmers. China is hitting Canada with a 75% duty on Canadian canola seed. The government of China has accused Canada of dumping and distorting its domestic market, but the duty is viewed mostly as a counteraction to Canadian tariffs on Chinese industries, notably Chinese-made electric vehicles. China is one of the most important export markets for Canadian canola. Canada exports about $5 billion worth of the product to that country every year. Speaking in Regina, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe said this decision by China is a direct result of the federal government's decision to impose tariffs on Chinese-made EVs.
This is a response to the government's tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles largely. And China's decision to impose preliminary anti-dumping duties, or what we would call temporary tariffs, is set at 75.8%. That's on Canadian canola seed as of August the 14th, this Thursday. That will have a devastating impact on the price points for Saskatchewan's canola industry, and I would say ultimately Saskatchewan's ag producers. So let me be clear that this hit will stop a significant amount of trade that is flowing into China today. This comes on top of the decision that China made in March of this year to impose 100% tariffs on Canadian canola oil, canola meal, as well as pea imports, and added to that some pork and seafood exports as well.
Yes, as the Premier mentioned, in addition to the tariffs on canola exports, back in March, China hit Canada with a 25% tariff on pork and seafood exports. Premier Moe said yesterday the timing couldn't be worse. Harvest is starting, and there's a lot of canola in the ground.
This announcement, and I would say that the timing of this announcement is in particularly hard on our ag producers in this province and across Canada, as they are hard at work starting their harvest procedures and getting their harvest underway. We've estimated about 12 million acres of canola is seeded in Saskatchewan just this year, and the Canadian canola industry is about $43 to $45 billion each and every year. That is responsible, that industry, for over 200,000 jobs, Canadian jobs, and with China accounting for about a third of our exports, the United States of America would be about 40% of said exports. They total about $5 billion. China's exports total about $5 billion annually, much of that coming from our province of Saskatchewan.
Premier Moe would go on to say the canola industry in this country is bigger than the EV industry, and all the industries in Ontario and Quebec that are being hit by the tariffs from the Trump administration. But it's an industry that's not getting the same attention from the federal government in Ottawa.
To put this in context, this $43 to $45 billion canola industry, the Canadian canola industry that we have employing just over 200,000 people, that is significantly larger than the steel industry, the aluminum industry, and the car manufacturing industry combined. It's about the same size as the Canadian forestry industry, of which we saw significant supports for just this past week. Each of those industries, the steel, the aluminum, and the EV industry, have also been hit hard by U.S. tariffs, as has our forestry industry been hit hard by U.S. tariffs. But canola producers hit with these Chinese tariffs, I would say that they deserve the same attention by our federal government and our Prime Minister as we're seeing in other industries. And we are asking that this be dealt with immediately. And I've reached out to the Prime Minister this morning, and I expect I'll be speaking with him at some point later today. As has our Agriculture Minister reached out to his counterpart, and our Trade Minister talking to his counterpart.
In neighboring Manitoba, the Premier there, Wab Kinew, posted a video statement on social media. He appears to be standing in a farmer's field. Premier Kinew claims these tariffs are already costing the Canadian economy $1 billion a day.
Chinese tariffs on canola cost Western Canada $1 billion today, and it could cost us more later this week. These 75% tariffs on our canola from China are causing damage at this important time of year. We've been standing up for farmers. Now we need to see the federal government offer that same sort of support that they've shown for steel and auto and lumber. Let's help our farmers. Let's help Canada.
While Western Canadian premiers demand help to deal with Chinese tariffs on a key export in agriculture, Ontario Premier Doug Ford was in the heart of auto country in Windsor, Ontario, taking more shots at Donald Trump.
And there's one thing President Trump has done. One thing. That's the only credit I'm going to give this guy, is he's united the country. He's united the country no matter what political stripe you're from. We're all Canadians, we're all Ontarians, and we're going to fight like no tomorrow.
Ford went on to say he's been trying to make the case to his American counterparts that the Trump tariffs are hurting Americans.
My message to the Americans, this does not work. Tariffs do not work. I've been listening to Ronald Reagan a lot, and, you know, tariffs are terrible for the global economy. What it does is reduce competitiveness, and it has more of a monopoly. People rely on government handouts, and what that causes? That causes inflation. So it does not work, and proof is in the pudding. I've been pounding the president and Howard Lutnick, Secretary Lutnick. You're doing nothing but hurting the American people. When you tariff Canadians, you're hurting Americans, and proof is in the pudding now. The auto sector, you heard, is $6.5 billion they've lost. And that's just the beginning. It's just going to continue. And the mayor mentioned it. I've always said you can't unscramble an egg. You got to make the omelet larger. And let's grow together. Let's create the AmCan fortress.
Premier Ford is scheduled to meet with Prime Minister Carney in Ottawa on Monday. Prime Minister Carney doesn't have any public events today. He is on what's being called by his staff a reduced schedule this week. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, we were on the air yesterday talking about the woods ban and the fire conditions in New Brunswick and in Nova Scotia. A major fire broke out in Halifax. It's in what's known as the Bayers Lake area. And Dan Ahlstrand and his team have been covering that story at 95.7 News Radio in Halifax. Dan is the news director there, and he joins me now. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
My pleasure, Rob. How are you?
I'm just great. Thank you. What is the status of this fire right now?
Well, Rob, just got an update from the Provincial Department of Natural Resources here about an hour ago. It remains out of control. It's about 16 or 17 hectares in size. They originally thought it was around 35, but they managed to get a perimeter around it, or at least to look at it, and have reduced that size. But it's still burning. I can still see smoke coming off of it. And there's a couple of helicopters working it, and about 35 firefighters are in the woods right now trying to get a handle on it.
We saw yesterday incredible pictures and video all over social media of water bombers from New Brunswick. What's the latest with water bombers? Are they still active, Dan?
No, the water bombers went home yesterday when it got dark here. They are obviously quite busy with those two big fires over in New Brunswick, the one in Irishtown and Moncton and the one up in Miramichi. So they sent them back to those duties when it got dark here last night. And DNR is telling us that if things flare up here or get worse, that they can come back. It's not that long to fly here from Moncton as the crow flies. So they can be back here if we need them. But as we speak now, there's just some Nova Scotia DNR helicopters with buckets dumping water on it.
Okay. What's the status with evacuations, businesses or residents being evacuated?
You mentioned that it's a busy shopping area. It's right on the edge of the city, and there's a couple of strip malls in there. There's a big Costco store and a Walmart store, and everybody's quite familiar with the way that these sort of power centers look. There's a strip mall that has a half a dozen or so more businesses on the western side of Bayers Lake that has been evacuated. The fire's not super close to it, but they've evacuated a precaution and to give them more access to the scene. There's some roads that are closed in that area as well as fire trucks and emergency responders do their thing.
Are homes at risk at all, Dan?
Not at this point. They really haven't throughout the event. It's been just about 24 hours now. Both officials here at HRM and with the Department of Natural Resources both saying that as it sits right now, there are no structures that are threatened. But as you well know, Rob, when these things, if the wind picks up all of a sudden, things can change pretty quickly.
So what is the air quality like in Halifax today?
If you're downwind from it, it's not very good. It was pretty thick yesterday with smoke, and we had a little bit of a misty morning, a typical Halifax fog morning, and I think that helped a little bit. My house I'm literally less than 2 kilometers from where the fire started, and the air quality here is fine, but I'm on the other side of the fire. It's wafting kind of towards the north and to the northwest. So people in those areas have been told to, shut off their air exchangers, and if they have any kind of respiratory problems, to stay inside and to try and avoid it.
How are people reacting, just given all the debate in recent days on your talk shows, on this talk show, about banning people from the woods because of the dry conditions across Nova Scotia? I'm wondering how this development has impacted that debate.
Well, I think that debate's going to continue, and I think it will continue probably long after the fire's put out. I don't know if it changed the opinion of those that were opposed to the ban, or if it reinforced the opinion of those that supported the ban. I think right now everybody is more concerned about getting the fire out before there's any kind of escalation or any buildings get damaged or anybody gets hurt. Thank goodness that to this point there's been no injuries reported.
And of course, it's been so hot and so dry. There's been a lack of rain in your part of the country. Dan, how's the weather looking? What's the forecast there?
Well, we got I'm going to call it a bit of a surprise this morning. As I mentioned, it was a really heavy, foggy morning here, and the ground got a little bit of moisture into it. And I know the firefighters were happy to see that. But conversely, with that, when it's foggy, obviously any kind of aviation assets are unable to get onto there, so they had to keep the helicopters on the ground for a while this morning. The long-term forecast, Rob, here is much the same as we've been seeing. There's a cold front that's supposed to be moving through here late Thursday night and into Friday. That's going to bring some scattered showers, but our weather specialist is telling us that it isn't going to be a whole lot, maybe 5, maybe 10 millimeters at most. And then on the other side of that front moving through, again, we're going to have this warm, dry, humid air. People I've talked to, Rob, have been saying that it's been a long time, if ever, that they can remember a summer, at least a half of a summer season that's been as dry as it has been here in Nova Scotia.
Thank you for the update, Dan Ahlstrand. Much appreciated.
All right, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, bye-bye. News Director at 95.7 News Radio in Halifax. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
There was some political business happening in Ottawa today. Conservative Member of Parliament Michelle Rempel-Garner from the Calgary area was on the Hill, saying the official opposition Conservatives will introduce legislation to amend the criminal code so that the immigration status of a non-citizen can't be considered by a judge during sentencing. This follows some news reports about this. There was one recently about a 30-year-old immigrant who was busted in a police sting in Mississauga trying to arrange to have sex with a 15-year-old. The 15-year-old was actually a cop. He pleaded guilty to committing an indecent act. That carries a maximum sentence of 2 years. The Crown wanted him to serve 90 days, but he was sentenced to 3 months of house arrest and given a conditional discharge, meaning if he stays out of trouble, he won't have a criminal record. And in handing down the sentence, the judge cited the impact that a criminal record would have on his immigration status and his ability to get a professional engineer's license. Today, Rempel-Garner said the Conservatives are proposing legislation to end the ability of judges to take such matters into account at sentencing.
Conservatives will introduce legislation to amend the criminal code to rectify this issue. Our bill will add a section after Section 718.202 of the Criminal Code, which will expressly outline that any potential impact of a sentence on the immigration status of a convicted non-citizen offender or that of their family members should not be taken into consideration by a judge when issuing a sentence. I want to be very clear. The vast majority of Canada's immigrants and temporary residents abide by our law. But removing non-citizens who have been convicted of serious crimes is a no-brainer, and it's one which the Liberals have failed to act upon. By contrast, Conservatives will always fight to protect Canadians, the value of our citizenship, and the safety of every person who lives here.
Well, the press gallery didn't seem all that interested in this announcement from the Conservatives. They didn't even ask a question about it. What the press gallery wanted to know about was the ban on walking in the woods in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick because of the fire risk. Those decisions were made by provincial governments, but none of the federal parties have said anything about it. This was Rempel Garner's opinion on the matter.
The fear that people experience during wildfire season is something that a lot of Canadians know. You know, I think back to what happened in Jasper National Park last year as an Albertan. And so my hearts are with them and their concern. And also with the firefighters and first responders who put their lives in harm's way during these situations. But I also think about the utter lack of action from the federal government on the issue of forest fires. I think it's four seasons ago now, 4 full wildfire seasons ago, the Liberals promised more water bombers, more firefighters. Where are they? The other thing is that my Conservative colleague Mark Dalton put forward a bill to increase the penalties for people who commit arson that causes a wildfire. So these are both measures that could have prevented and contained wildfire, and the Liberals have done nothing. So wait, my concern is this. Whenever there's a major crisis, what the Liberal government has done by their inaction has conditioned Canadians to expect that the only response they can see out of their federal government is to restrict their movement. And again, I understand that people, I understand the fear and concern of people in the Maritimes right now, but that the only response they get from their federal government is a tacit, well, I guess you're going to have to restrict your movement. That's not right.
That's Michelle Rempel Garner on Parliament Hill today. She's the Conservative MP, Calgary Nose Hill. She's also the official opposition critic for immigration, refugees, and citizenship. I'm Rob Snow. This is, now you know, this is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
On News Radio.
This Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump is supposed to have a meeting in Alaska with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Ending the war in Ukraine is the big issue. During the daily White House briefing, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt outlined what Trump expects from the meeting.
On Friday morning, President Trump will travel across the country to Anchorage, Alaska, for a bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The brutal war between Russia and Ukraine broke out under Joe Biden's incompetent leadership. But President Trump is determined to try and end this war and stop the killing. This is a listening exercise for the president. Look, only one party that's involved in this war is going to be present. And so this is for the president to go and to get, again, a more firm and better understanding of how we can hopefully bring this war to an end.
Why not invite Ukrainian President Zelensky to that summit? I know the president said yesterday that he planned to speak with him right after the summit and even before. But why not invite Zelensky? And whose decision was it to not invite him? Was it the president or was it President Putin?
Well, this meeting came about because the president of Russia asked the president of the United States to meet through his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who, as you all know, traveled to Russia to have a conversation with Putin at his request. And so the president is agreeing to this meeting at the request of President Putin. And the goal of this meeting for the president is to walk away with a better understanding of how we can end this war.
The president said at the podium yesterday twice that he was planning to go to Russia. Was that a verbal slip-up, or does he actually plan to go to Russia?
Perhaps there are plans in the future to travel to Russia. And on Friday, the president will be meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, as you know.
Does the president plan to meet with Putin one-on-one?
Yes, that's part of the plan.
Now, a couple of days ago, Trump said he's having this meeting because Putin asked for it.
This is really a feel-out meeting, a little bit. And President Putin invited me to get involved. He wants to get involved. I believe he wants to get it over with. Now, I've said that a few times, and I've been disappointed. We're going to see what he has in mind. And if it's a fair deal, I'll reveal it to the European Union leaders and to the NATO leaders and also to President Zelensky. I think out of respect, I'll call him first. And then I'll call them after. And I may say, lots of luck, keep fighting. Or I may say, we can make a deal.
Trump also said at the same news event, Trump continued to claim that the election he lost was rigged and that Russia's invasion of Ukraine never would have happened if he had won the election.
Money that's been spent and the death is incredible. It's the worst thing that's happened, by far the worst that's happened since World War II. So I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin, and I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war, you got to end it. And he wasn't going to mess with me. This war would have never happened. You know, we had a discussion about it one time, and we never had that discussion again. Would have never happened. And when the election was rigged, and then Biden took office, which was barely took office, the auto pen took office, bad things started happening. Bad things, stupid things were said. And it ended up in a war. And you know, and I don't believe this will happen anymore because I have that pretty well covered. This could end up in a third world war. This could have been a third world war. I don't think that's going to happen now. But I thought it was very respectful that the president of Russia is coming to our country as opposed to us going to his country or even a third-party place.
Trump said if there's going to be an end to this war, there are going to have to be land swaps, meaning Ukraine will lose territory. Ahead of this meeting, Trump held a virtual meeting today with European leaders. The Ukrainian president, Vladimir Zelensky, he is in Berlin. He's having talks with the German chancellor. And at some point today, Zelensky is also supposed to be part of a virtual meeting with Trump and the U.S. Vice President, J.D. Vance. Still ahead on Now You Know with Rob Snow, as we have discussed many times on this program. There are financial pressures facing younger Canadians, millennials, and members of Gen Z, and how those financial pressures can mean delays in members of these generations making big life-changing decisions like getting married or starting a family. We're going to be speaking with an expert who has been studying what's weighing on people's minds, younger Canadians, what's weighing on their minds when they think about making these big life decisions, owning a home, getting married, starting a family. That's just ahead. As well, the very latest on the Toronto Blue Jays, who are the first team in the American League to hit the 70-win mark. They accomplished that last night. 5-1 win in a series opener against the Chicago Cubs. And the Blue Jays president and CEO Mark Shapiro had an on-field Q&A with the news media. We'll let you hear some of that. All of that is just ahead. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. And this is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
We've talked about it a lot on this show, the financial pressures being faced by younger Canadians, the millennials, Gen Z, and how it means delays and big life-changing decisions, getting married, starting a family. Well, BMO is out with its latest Real Financial Progress Index. It looks at what is weighing on people's minds when they think about making these big life decisions. Gayle Ramsay is the head of the Everyday Banking Segment and Customer Growth at BMO. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. When you ask people what's it like right now trying to raise children, what are they telling you? Are they finding they can manage? Is it overwhelming? Just what are they telling you?
What we're seeing is, 70% of Canadians want to have children. They fear the negative impact on their financial security. And so what we're seeing in terms of them considering for decisions about having children or not is, impact on their financial stability, about 44%. Finding the right partner, of course, which is about 34%. The ability to be present for your children and have time for them, around 27%. And then mental and physical health. So these are the things that concern them. And the financial stability is the number one concern about having children in terms of how they're going to support them, as well as their long-term financial health.
Okay. Do people this age in these generations, do they want to have children?
Yeah, overwhelmingly, we're looking like I'd say 7 in 10 Gen Zs and Millennials do want to have children.
How many children do they want to have?
On average, it looks like 2 is what basically came out of the survey, that they figured 2 was a nice even number.
Okay. And when you ask them about, well, what's the emotional toll of parenthood? What do they tell you?
81% of them will tell us that, being a parent brings them joy and fulfillment, but they do acknowledge that there's impact to their finances. There's, the emotional toll in terms of, managing, having kids, as well as managing yourself in your day-to-day. And those are kind of the main things that they said in terms of that, yes, it's a joy, but it also is, it does compromise financial security for them.
Okay. There's this old line, everyone wants to keep up with the Joneses. They have a nice house. We want a nice house. They have a nice car in the driveway. We want a nice car in the driveway. When it comes to these big life decisions, this pressure to keep up with the Joneses, how much of a factor is that?
So when we look at that piece, what we did find was that they do feel pressure for that. It's about 3/4 of people admit that there's pressure for them for their parent to keep up with the Joneses, right? So that's a pretty large number when they think that not only do I have to raise the kids, but I'm also looking at how I actually, how I measure up with other parents and their children.
Okay. Cost of living is such an issue. Prices are higher. I mean, parents are out there, they're shopping for back to school supplies right now, and I'm sure there's sticker shock again being experienced by parents from coast to coast to coast. These everyday costs, childcare, extracurricular activities. What are some of the long-term implications here, Gayle?
Well, I mean, when you look at what they've said, like some parents say what surprising cost them was certainly, and I think we can all relate to this, groceries are up. 39% of them are concerned about that. The activities they have like in terms of 37% are concerned that the activities they have in terms of make sure the kids have a fulfilling life and activities is a concern. And what it means for them is just in terms of their long-term financial stability, right? In terms of how they are going to make sure their kids have all the things that they need, and then also for themselves in terms of when they're looking at their own investments in their future for retirement.
Okay, let's say somebody wants to achieve these goals. They want to get married, they want to have a family. What's some practical advice that can help them get there? What would you advise?
What I always say to people is the first thing I always say is make sure you have a budget, right? But you should have like a family-centered budget if you're thinking about that. And most importantly, having a financial plan. There are advisors out there to help you. There's even digital tools that help you think about if I'm looking at my plan in terms of, what do I spend today? What do I want to save for, if it's saving for health or planning for kids, and making sure that you actually have that I think is a really important first step before you actually go embark in terms of having children.
Right. There are a lot of government benefits as well, though, right? You should maximize those. Yeah.
Yeah, like when you think of if you have children, there's a lot of opportunity in terms of The Canada Child Benefit is available to you. There's also the GST and HST credit that you have available. And then when you think about at tax time, there's like lots of strategies to leverage. And that is includes of like you have RSPs that you can use in terms of setting up for education for kids. Tax-free savings account is another one. And then also some of the deductions you have for like childcare expenses. There's options for people to use in terms of that could actually help them, manage their budget and also, provide things to help with their kids.
Yeah. Some people of a certain generation, you never talked about money at home. Would you encourage people, like parents, to talk to their children about money, financial literacy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think financial literacy is one of those things in foundations that is never too early to start with the kids. And there's lots of things available. For BMO, we have a thing called Smart Progress, which gives you foundational pieces about financial literacy and budgeting and planning, and it's available for all Canadians. But I do think particularly the kids, it's never too young for them to start in terms of learning how to budget. It actually will be, put to use lifelong benefits for them all.
Excellent advice. Thank you. Gayle Ramsay, good to hear from you today. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. The head of Everyday Banking segment and customer growth at BMO. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
And if you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, Now You Know with Rob Snow, there's a mobile app that will help you hear our show when you want to. Listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. That's Seeker, spelled S-E-E-K-R. And it has all kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. And you can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, spelled S-E-E-K-R. And Now You Know with Rob Snow is also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. The Toronto Blue Jays are now the first team in the American League to hit the 70-win mark this season. They accomplished that with a 5-1 win at home, series opener against the Chicago Cubs. Ernie Clement hit a 3-run home run. Dalton Varsho added a solo home run. Vladimir Guerrero had 3 hits. On the mound, Jose Barrios went 5 1/3, gave up 2 hits, no runs in the win. It was a sellout crowd at Rogers Center. They've sold out every home game for the last month. Attendance a little more than 43,000 yesterday. And maybe that's one reason why the Blue Jays have the best home record in the American League. But there was also news off the field. Blue Jays president and CEO Mark Shapiro had an on-field Q&A with the news media, and he said this season's version of the Jays has established its own brand of baseball.
Surprising outcome, certainly at the end of last season where the Blue Jays were at that point in time, there were a lot of questions, but the Blue Jays are in a much different spot as an organization. Obviously, the team is in first place in the American League East instead of last, but organizationally, the farm system is much stronger. The draft this year has been much stronger than the past few drafts, and there has been a bit more of a replenishment. So there's some stuff that is happening beneath the surface that would support that outcome. And look, we'll have to see how exactly this plays out. But again, Shapiro is too astute to put something like that out into the public without understanding what the implications of that would be.
Also notable that Blue Jays manager John Schneider is without a contract for next season. Shapiro spoke rather glowingly about Shapiro, but directed all questions about an extension for Schneider to general manager Ross Atkins. Further to that, the payroll is something that we always talk about with Mark Shapiro, and the Blue Jays are running a club record payroll this year, and they just took on more at the trade deadline. They were already above CBT thresholds at which they were paying a tax on their overages, and are now flirting with an area where they could be taking draft penalization, which obviously has a big impact on your ability to add talent to the future of the organization. Here's how Shapiro responded to questions about the club's payroll and potential penalties coming from the CBT.
every decision will weigh the opportunity that's at hand, the chance to grab the brass ring with the consequences and costs that come with it. So there is a residue of winning that makes it more of a challenge to sustain winning going forward, but we want to make it as hard as possible because that means we pick later in the draft. The better our record, the later we pick. That's okay. So, we want to be in a position to have those type of tough decisions, and that's just one more of many.
So the Jays are 4.5 games up on the Boston Red Sox now in the American League East. Boston clobbered Houston yesterday 14-1. The Jays are 6 games up on the Yankees. The Yankees routed the Twins yesterday 9-1. Game 2 of the Cubs and Jays at Rogers Center in Toronto today. Kevin Gausman on the mound for Toronto. First pitch 7:07 Eastern time. You can catch all the Blue Jays action on Sportsnet. Listen to the games on the radio at 95.7 News Radio in Halifax, 570 News Radio in Kitchener, and on Sportsnet 960 The Fan in Calgary. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback is coming up next. We're talking about the weather on Talkback today. The weather. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion about the big issues of the day. Today's topic, the weather. The weather, okay? It's the weather. It's the middle of August. Here are some questions for you about the weather. Is the weather different now than it used to be? Is the weather different now than it used to be? Is the weather more extreme than you remember it being in the past? Is the weather more extreme than you remember it being in the past? And when you hear this line, extreme weather is the new normal. Extreme weather is the new normal. Do you think that's true? That when it's hot, it's actually hotter than it used to be. When it's wet, it's wetter than it used to be. Or when it's dry, it's drier than it used to be. In your opinion, are we getting more snow than we used to? Are we getting less snow than we used to? Are winters different than you remember them being in the past? Are they more mild? What would you say on the weather? On the weather, what would you say? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. The weather. The weather. Sometimes it's all anyone talks about, the weather. Here where I live, just north of Ottawa, it rained for a few hours this morning. And I'm telling you what, I don't think I've ever been happier to see rain. It has been so dry around here. We have a fire ban in effect, as I've mentioned in recent days. And it's been hot. And it has been hot. Yesterday, it was 35 degrees here. And I'm sure it's been that hot here before. I just can't seem to remember it being that hot. And I'll tell you what, for the last 3 nights, it's been tough for a lot of people falling asleep because the temperature hasn't fallen below 20 degrees. And even though it rained today and it's a little bit cooler, we still have a heat warning in effect here. In Nova Scotia, it was a little cooler. They had some fog today, as our friend Dan Ahlstrand in Halifax told us. But there's really no let up. Not much rain in the forecast. Lots of warm weather in the forecast. And he says when he talks to people, they can't remember it being so hot for so long. Similar situation across much of southern Ontario. Highs in the high 20s, low 30s, humidex in the mid 30s. Alberta seems to be the exception lately. A little cooler. Although there are some parts of Alberta that have been really hot, and there are heat warnings in effect. Not many, though. But across Atlantic Canada, I mean, they are just desperate for rain. They're desperate for rain. The Premier of New Brunswick was asked what it would take to end this woods ban, and she asked people, well, pray for rain or do a rain dance. Rainfall in the Halifax area is 60% of what it normally would be this time of year. Some municipalities have ordered residents already ration water. Other municipalities encouraging residents to ration water. news reports about people's wells running dry. Prince Edward Island, it was just Old Home Week in Prince Edward Island, suffering from moderate to severe drought, according to the Department of Agriculture. Rained in Ottawa today, first rain in 2 weeks. There's been almost no rain in Toronto over the last 2 weeks. In British Columbia, places like the South Coast, Vancouver Island, parts of the interior, they've had less than half of the normal amount of rain that they would get during the summertime. 60% of the country is described as abnormally dry or suffering from various degrees of drought. More than 60% of the farmland in this country has been affected by dry weather. But as bad as some of the news has been, there's been positive news as well. Situation across southern Alberta, which had been bone dry, has improved. There's been above normal precipitation. And also, knock on wood, it's been a quiet on the hurricane front. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, said it was going to be an above normal hurricane season, but it's been relatively quiet so far. Just 4 named storms. No real impact on Atlantic Canada yet. Because of the wildfires, because of the heat, because of the lack of rain, we've had news stories in the last week or so, experts telling the news media, this is the new normal. There have been headlines recently such as, hot weather may be the new normal. Sweltering heat, the new normal of a warming world. Weather whiplash. Weather whiplash. Scientists say it's becoming the new normal. Extreme weather is the new normal. Will heat waves become the new normal? All headlines in the last week or so. Environment Canada has insisted for years we are experiencing more and more extreme weather events, from heat waves to smoky skies to catastrophic flooding. Quoting directly from Environment Canada's own literature, exceptional weather is becoming ordinary. Environment Canada says Canada's not as cold as it used to be. There are fewer frost-free days, and when it rains longer and it rains harder, and flash flooding is becoming more common. Storms are getting bigger. They move more slowly. They cause more damage. And events that were rare when our parents and our grandparents were growing up are now commonplace. That's the view of the people who study Canada's weather for a living. That when it comes to the weather, there's a new normal. And the new normal is one of extremes. And that the weather really is different than it used to be. What would you say? Let's talk about the weather today. Is the weather different than it used to be? Is it more extreme than you remember it being in the past? When you hear extreme weather is the new normal, do you think that's true? Our phone lines are open right now. The number to call, 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that, and we will make your call a priority. Is the weather different than it used to be? More extreme than you remember it being? I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Where we're talking about the weather today. Asking you, is the weather different now than it used to be? Than you remember it being in the past? Is it more extreme than you remember it being in the past? When you hear this line, extreme weather is the new normal, because I hear that all the time. Extreme weather is the new normal. Do you think that's true? 1-833-668-2577. 3 lines available. Let's talk about the weather. The weather's been all over the news in the last few weeks, that's for sure. Lane in Calgary. Up first today on Talkback. Lane?
Hi, Rob.
Hey,
I am a
Lane, how
first-time
are you?
caller.
Well, I appreciate
Not
that
too bad. Yourself?
very much. Just great, sir. Just great. Rained, so I'm happy.
So, I'm over 60, so I've been around long enough to see some weather.
You've seen a lot of weather,
I recall as a kid seeing minus 40 a lot more often than I do now, but I did live farther north in the Grand Prairie area rather than up around Calgary. We got lots of snow. We got lots of weird weather. I recall hearing about it on the radio periodically, but it's reported a lot more pervasively than it used to be. You see any kind of weird weather anywhere in the world nowadays, and it's instantly on the news. It didn't always used to be that way. There wasn't as much news. There wasn't as much sensationalism. Probably the biggest thing I notice now is the sheer number of people without qualifications immediately jumping up and down and spouting global warming at anything that seems different to them. Last September, we had a day that was about 36 above. It broke a record, a 100-year-old record by like 0.1 degrees or something like that. And instantly, news people were jumping on it going, oh, global warming. But nobody mentioned the fact that it had barely broken a record that was 100 years old. So I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced that there's a lot more strange weather than there ever was. I think we just pay a lot more attention to it now, and people immediately try to blame it on global warming.
Right. But is the weather different than you remember it being? Or is it about the same? And there's always been there have always been extreme weather events.
I think so. As a teenager, I remember walking to school in the middle of November with no snow. I remember a year we had no snow on Christmas Day. But I also remember summer where we got 6 inches of snow in the middle of July. So
in the middle of July,
that kind of stuff has happened for as long as I can remember.
Right. When you hear this line, extreme weather is the new normal, what do you think about that? Extreme weather is the new normal.
Honestly, I feel like it's a bit of an exaggeration, but to be fair, I don't have the stats to say for sure one way or the other.
All right, Lane. Fair enough. Great to take your call today. Get your 60-plus years of weather watching experience on the line. 1-833-668-2577. 4 lines available there. Wait won't be too long. Just talking about the weather today. Canadians love to talk about the weather. Linda in southern Alberta. Hello, Linda.
Hello.
Hi, Linda. What would you say? Is the weather different now than it used to be?
Well, like the other caller, I grew up in the 50s too, and we had extremes. Like we had like 110 in the shade in the summer, and we spent our time down at the river when the water was good. And then there was years where the water wasn't good, so you couldn't even spend your time down at the river. And then we've had snowstorms where schools were closed and everything else, and it was cold. So to me, it's been like this back and forth. The only thing is like the guy said, something happens and it's global warming. Well, to me, that's kind of now like a catchphrase, right? As soon as this happens, well, then it's global warming. Well, I think when we overexpand our cities and then we have nothing but cement in there, that generates its own weather. We cut down more trees. We're doing some damage that way.
Okay.
But,
okay.
I just think we've had.
But on this question that the weather is more extreme than it has been in the past, what would you say to that?
Well, again, it's like we didn't have TV. We only had radio a little bit. So it's like you didn't hear a lot of stuff that went on. There was nothing really extreme that we heard about. And if there was, it's just in your backyard, in your own area that, if it was extreme. But, I don't know. I just feel like I remember being a kid and this is same old, same old.
Same old, same old. Yeah. So when you hear extreme weather is the new normal. But extreme weather is the new normal.
Yeah. Do
you think that's true?
Well, I think it's a catchphrase. The only way it's new normal is if you got to realize that when you're building cement cities, you're going to generate your own weather. Because that was what I learned in the science class too. That because it holds cement holds the heat, and at night the heat is evaporating, whatever, and if there's storms and stuff, it's more attracted to that. So yeah, I don't know. I think you just have to look at where you're living, and because I know where I used to live, the weather is still the same.
Weather's still the same. Okay, thank you, Linda. Good to hear from you. 1-833-668-2577. 2577. Let's talk about the weather with your help on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
And the topic of the day is the weather. We're asking, do you think, in your own opinion, in your own lived experience, your life experience, is the weather different now than it used to be? Have you ever thought, gosh, I don't remember weather like this? Is the weather more extreme than you remember it being in the past? Or when you hear extreme weather is the new normal, that's all over the news. Extreme weather is the new normal. Do you think that's true? Is there something to that? Extreme weather is the new normal. It's more common now. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. It's interesting. The first two callers have brought up, well, there's just so much information about the weather now. You know, it never used to have 24-hour weather networks, for example. You know, and in the news business, we love the weather. We love to report on the weather because people love to know about the weather. You know, we have the weather network now. You know, what would they do at the weather network if they didn't have interesting or unusual weather to report on? I mean, you've got to feed the beast, right? Imagine this. Welcome to the weather network. The weather is perfectly normal. Go back to doing whatever it was you were doing. I mean, that wouldn't be great for ratings, would it? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. To Jay in Kitchener on the line. Hello, Jay. You're on the air.
In 1984, I used to go to the camp for the blind in Prairie
Okay.
And I could spend like up to 2 weeks out in the sun, and the tan would last till like November, but you'd be okay. You do that now, you won't make it home. The sun will cook you like in a day compared to what I would do in 2 weeks.
So do you think it's do you think the weather is more severe, the weather is more extreme now, Jay? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Like, whereas, you know, you used to be able to sit in the sun, get a tan. Now, if you did the same thing, you'd get, burnt to a crisp. Is that what you're saying?
Way beyond. Yeah.
Beyond.
It's
Okay.
Yeah. You feel a difference even if you're waiting, because I'm in a wheelchair and also visually impaired. And if you wait outside for your transportation, sometimes you have to wait up to half an hour. You can feel the sun cooking you now, whereas before, years ago, it'd be nice to be nice and warm in the sun. Now you don't want to be in the sun just because it's not safe now.
Right. So do you think the weather is more extreme?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
You do. Yeah. And when you hear this line, Jay, I'm sure you've heard it, extreme weather is the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that? Do you think there's any truth in that?
I do think so. I think because of all the fires and like the trees that we've lost and everything else, like there's not as much protection. Like there's a lot more open space, and then with a lot more open space, when you have the tornadoes and the hurricanes, because there's much more open area, there could be more damage from extreme weather.
Okay, Jay. Look, thank you for offering your opinion. Thanks for taking me up on the offer today, Jay. Good to hear from you. You keep well, my friend. I know you're a big baseball fan. Hope you're cheering for the Jays there. 1-833-668-2577. We're talking about the weather today. You know, think about all your years. Okay, all the weather you've seen over the course of your life, and now think about Canada here, summer 2025. Is the weather different now than it used to be? More extreme than you remember it being in the past? And when you hear this line, extreme weather is the new normal, is there any truth to that? We'll be back right after the latest breaking news. It's Talk Back, just getting started here on a Wednesday. Latest breaking news next on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Some parts of the country, they say, well, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. It'll change, but is the weather different now than it used to be? What would you say? Is the weather more extreme? Is extreme weather more common than it has been in the past? And when you hear this line, extreme weather is the new normal, do you think that's true? 1-833-668-2577. Talking about the weather today on Talk Back. In Calgary, Norm is up next. Hi, Norm.
Hey, Rob, thanks for having me. And
hey, my pleasure.
About to take my opinion here.
Yes, sir.
I have come to the conclusion, I think this weather modification stuff that the elite parasites are doing are causing problems with our weather. And what I mean by this is during December, I actually went out to my van. There was a dust over top of the hood of my van, and I dusted it off with a paintbrush into a jar. And the amount of microscopic aluminum particles and other toxics that were on the hood of my van was just phenomenal. So, like, I think with this weather modifications that they're doing with this
are you still with me? You're breaking up a bit there, Norm. Oh, I think we lost Norm. That's too bad. He says there's weather modification happening, and he thinks it's messing with the weather. I can't speak to that. I don't really know much about that. But let's move along here to Cochrane. Valerie, let's talk to Valerie on Talk Back today. Hi, Valerie.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a first.
It's my pleasure.
Caller, so.
Well, I appreciate that as well, Valerie. Is the weather different?
Yes, absolutely. And
okay.
Yeah, because I'm in my 70s.
Okay.
And I remember when you did not hear about tornadoes in Alberta. And we're getting tornado warnings on a daily basis. We've turned into Tornado Alley North. As well, I remember going to the Columbia ice fields as a child, and we got out, and the ice fields were right up at the highway. You could walk onto the ice field off the highway, and it's 2.5 kilometers back now. You know, I think we're really creating problems with, the polar ice caps melting, and I don't know how to stop it, obviously, but definitely it's got to have an effect on the weather.
This is very interesting. You mentioned tornadoes because in this part of the country, in the Ottawa area, we also are getting this reputation as of being a kind of a tornado alley. I lived in Ottawa. I lived in the city of Ottawa for 30 years. We never used to, I can't remember getting tornadoes. And then I think I'm trying to think when that was, 3 years ago, maybe. We had a terrible event with tornadoes, like 6 tornadoes in one day. And as you say, from time to time, there are tornado warnings. That is kind of a new thing, I think.
When I was growing up, the only way you knew a tornado was coming if somebody looked out the window and said, "Holy cow, what's that?"
Right. I mean, which is not to say there haven't been tornadoes in the past. I mean, certainly there have been tornadoes in the past, but I think of tornado, I think Saskatchewan, or I think Kansas. I don't think, Ottawa or a place like that, so it is kind of a new thing to me.
Alberta we're getting tornado warnings on a daily basis. It's well, not on a daily basis, but much more frequently, and it's frightening, quite honestly.
Okay. So you think the weather's more extreme than you remember it being?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And when you hear this, extreme weather is the new normal. What do you think when you hear? You believe it?
I believe it. 100%.
100%.
So.
Okay.
I believe that it's, the extreme weather is, we don't have the mid anymore. We either have extreme or nothing. It's sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like when it's hot, it's really hot. When it's cold, it's really cold. When it's wet, it's really wet. And when it's dry, it's really dry kind of thing.
Yeah, we've had the wettest, absolute wettest summer that we've had for ages. Daily thunderstorms. So I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not saying I have any answers or anything. I'm just asking questions, of course. Thank you, though, for sharing your thoughts on it, Valerie. Very good to hear from you today. To Guelph, Ontario, Paul is up next. Hello, Paul.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my
Hi,
call.
Paul. My pleasure, Paul. Is the weather different now than it used to be?
Well, yeah, definitely. I grew up as a kid in the 70s, and, no sunscreen, and you get a little bit of a tan and that, but it seems, maybe I'm older now, but it seems like the sun, and I agree with your other caller, the sun's rays seem much, much stronger. And I don't know where that's coming from, but I can tell you one thing. I mean, I'm in southern Ontario, and if you take a look at you go to a Google map, Google Earth, and you look at Ontario, and you can see how much greenland has been gone that we've taken away. We've taken away all kinds of forests. I think they say something like we've lost like 80% of our wetlands. And when you consider that, the forests that we live, I actually am fortunate enough to live out in the country and near a forested area. And whenever we go home, we're about 2 to 3 degrees cooler than we are in the city every day. It's always like that. And so when you consider that forests, and lakes and ponds and stuff like that, they actually absorb the sun's rays. They absorb the heat from the sun. And instead, what we've done, we've paved over so much of that, either paved over or we've got buildings with the asphalt roofs on them and everything else. All that does is reflect the sun's rays back up into the atmosphere, reflect the heat rather than absorb the heat. So, I think we're always going to have much more warmer summers now going forward the more we take away the forests. I don't think any type of carbon emissions or carbon footprint emissions are going to resolve the issue that we keep taking away more and more green space and paving over more and more green space as the population grows.
Okay. When you hear extreme weather is the new normal, do you think there's truth in that? Extreme weather is the new normal.
Truth. I mean, you just look at the last couple of years.
Okay.
I mean, we went from a really cold winter to like very hot summer and hardly any spring. And I expect it's gonna happen again by the end of September. We're just gonna go to some extreme cold temperatures again. And it's obviously the weather patterns are changing worldwide, but you have to look at what we are doing worldwide. We're paving over a lot of the greenery that the earth has, and again, that absorbed all the heat. And without the heat absorption, where's that heat gonna go? And it goes back into the atmosphere, I think, and causes more weather issues.
Very interesting, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, you're kind of building on Linda's point about the cities are expanding so much and reflecting so much heat, and that's bound to have an effect on the weather. That was her thought. Seems to be you're along the same lines. 1-833-668-2577. Join the discussion today on the weather. Is it different now than it used to be? This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Tell me about Gen Z. Let's go to Brandon in Kitchener. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Tell me about Gen Z.
So I fall in this age range. I'm 23 years old, and I'm an apprentice. I personally think, I'm not going to generalize the whole entirety of Gen Z, but I see a lot of people, I think, in my age range that are not motivated enough or driven enough to do much. And I think that a lot of the people in my age range should be taking some more risks, because I think if you don't take risks, there's no way you can learn from making a mistake or, finding a different way to do something. I think a lot of people, like I said, my age range are not, I don't think they do enough day to day. I don't think they're as interested in getting jobs or getting out and doing things as people were in your generation. And I'm not going to say that things it isn't hard to live right now, because I'd love to move out, but things are too expensive. But I definitely think that people my age could take a little more risk and do a little more to be independent, even if it's at home or things like that.
Okay. So do you think, for you and your friends and colleagues, do you think your life is, say, harder than what your parents had when they were trying to make their way in life? What would you say?
Well, like Michelle said, I think every generation is going to have its own unique challenges and hardships. But for my parents, I would say it depends on what you're talking about. I mean, there's certain aspects that would have been harder for them, I think, that are easier for us now, but harder for us now and easier for them.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's give us some examples here. Okay.
I think that back in the day,
getting a career type job, like a career type job where you could say, like, I could see myself doing this and making good money and whatever, and enjoying that work-life balance that people want. Buying a place of your own, maybe getting married and starting a family, like to do those big life things. Do you think it's harder for your generation than it was, say, for your parents?
I would say, yeah, certain things. It was easier for my parents to get a mortgage. It was easier for them to, live on a single income versus like if I got married. You have to have, I think, two people working now to be able to afford anything decent, or doing two people with decent jobs, or one person with a very decent job.
Yeah.
So in certain aspects, I would say yes.
All right, Brandon. Thank you. All the best, sir. Thanks for the call. Charlie up next, calling from Calgary, like the first call from Calgary today. No, second call from Calgary today. Hi, Charlie. What's your opinion here,
Hi,
Charlie?
how
Tell
you
me
doing?
about Gen Z. I'm good, Charlie. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I wanted to talk about a couple things. The license, in our generation, we would get a license right away.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
As opposed to the kids now. I think a little bit of that has to do with the fact that transportation back in our day was a little bit different. There were buses, obviously, but that the bus schedule was not regular. Like nowadays, you could get a bus in 15 minutes. It's just constant.
Right.
You could hop on the C train. You can get from one end of the city pretty easily. But back in our day, it could take an hour or 2 hours to get from one end of the city to the other. So back in our day, the requirement or the urgency to get our license was pretty high, just so that we could get around. Sometimes back in our day, just walking to our destination, we'd get there faster than taking the bus, just because we have to wait for the bus, right? So that's the first thing. The other thing is, back in my day, I got a job for $2.25, and I was happy with that. $3.25, $4.20, it was pretty amazing back then, and things were relative to income as well. I think things are relative to income right now too. People make $20, $25, $30 an hour. I know the minimum wage here is $15 an hour. But I do believe that things are pretty relative. And maybe that is my own personal opinion. I'm a single person, always been, paid my own mortgage, had 2 kids, raised them by myself. I do okay, and I don't understand the angst that we are giving the children that are behind us, because we all had to struggle, and it wasn't pretty when I was growing up and became an adult, and it wasn't easy. And I'm not saying it's easy now. I just don't think it's as hard as people are claiming it to be, I guess.
Okay. Thank you for your call. Good to hear from you today. I have to stop here, however, and we'll be right back. We're talking about Gen Z today. Tell me about Gen Z, your experiences, either raising Gen Z, working alongside Gen Z. Tell us a little bit about it, please. 1-833-668-2577. This is Talk Back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Is the weather different than it used to be? Let's talk to Stephen in Nova Scotia. Get some calls on from Nova Scotia here. Stephen. Hi there, Stephen.
Hey, Hey, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm just great, Stephen. How are you?
I could complain, but it's not Friday. So
Okay.
not gonna complain.
All right.
I'm not sure if the weather is any different. Like when I was growing up in the 70s, we had tons of snow and in the wintertime and stuff like that. And then, when I was living in Dartmouth, we got hit with Hurricane Juan. Then when I moved out to Upper Tantallon, we got hit with massive amounts of snowfall. I think little idiosyncrasies are going to happen. Now, is the weather changing? Yeah, absolutely. Climate warming is happening, and things are crunchy, and there's no rain here in Nova Scotia. And we've got in Atlantic Canada, we've got wildfires going on. In Newfoundland, I'm touching base with friends of mine that are living in CBS and St. John's, and making sure they're safe and they're okay, and they've never gone through an evacuation. I think little tiny idiosyncrasies are changing. I'm not sure how we alter that.
Okay.
I'm really not 100% sure. I don't think the weather is changing in some respects. I think it's altering.
Okay, so then what do you think of this line? What do you think of this line, Stephen? Just because our time is a little bit tight here. Extreme weather is the new normal. Do you think that's true? Extreme weather is the new normal.
I don't think I don't think so. I think it's shifting to different months of the year. I think what's happening is the patterns are moving to different months. So in the fall, where we're used to wonderful, beautiful, great fall days, now we're getting hit with a deluge of rain. Whereas we used to not get hit with that. I just think it's moving. I don't think it's extreme, to be honest with you, Rob.
Okay, and not all that different than it has been in the past when you were a young man or a teenager or whatever the case might be.
I've been on this planet for 58 revolutions, so it seems to keep going and going and going. But unfortunately for Linda, you're not my breakfast personality.
You'd have to sleep pretty late,
Todd Vino is my breakfast personality.
Okay.
So
there you go. Thank you.
No, I appreciate.
Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate your call today, and for being a loyal listener like that to both my show and the Todd Vino show in Halifax. Great show. Be right back with another full hour of talking about the weather today. Just asking you, is it different than it used to be? More extreme? Is extreme weather the new normal? What do you think when you hear that? 1-833-668-2577. After the news, more of your calls on Talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2. We've been trying something a little different today. We've been just talking about one generation and one generation only. That's Gen Z. That's people between 13 and 28. Okay, so young teenagers and fully grown adults. But we want to know what makes them tick, what's important to them, what do they like, what do they want in life. Is their life harder? Is their life harder than it was for previous generations? What about these stereotypes? How accurate are they? Always online, addicted to the phones, addicted to social media, short attention spans. Any truth to that? They're lazy, don't have the same work ethic. Any truth to that? hop from job to job. No sense of loyalty to an employer. Want big money, don't want to put in the work. Easily offended. Constant supervision. They need constant supervision, constant validation. Woke. They're woke. Are these stereotypes accurate? It's just one angle of the conversation. Tell us about Gen Z. Tell us about that person you know. Maybe you're that person. Between the ages of 13 and 28. What makes them tick? 1-833-668-2577. Right back to the phones. Let's get to Ifo in Halifax. Ifo.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I'm in a unique situation in that I started university in 1990, left for a while, and then went back, and then I graduated in 2016.
Okay.
So I have the advantage of experiencing multiple generations and seeing how the economy has messed things up. I remember when minimum wage in Atlantic Canada was about $4.25 or $4.75, and you could get a place to rent a 2 or 3 bedroom for less than $500. Now minimum wage is about $1,500. And you can barely get a 1 bedroom for $1,500. I remember the people who started university with me in the 90s and graduated were able to buy homes for under $100K. You can't find anything in Halifax for under $400.
Wow. Okay.
You know, and then people talk about the loyalty for employee, no loyalty from the younger generation. The question is, do we have loyalty of the employers to the employees?
Are the employers worthy of the loyalty, you mean? Are they treating their employees well enough that they deserve loyalty? Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah,
look at the massive layoffs. You look at all the labor strikes that are going on, where even those who are unionized are finding, whether that be Canada Post or Air Canada, the employers themselves are showing that they do not care about the workers. Meanwhile, the CEOs of the big rigs management are getting big raises when it's the workers. I'm a union person, by the way, just in case you haven't noticed. So I think we have the situation where the employers the employers do not deserve the loyalty because they don't show any loyalty to the workers. You know, and then I think there's also the younger generation is not willing to take the sort of abuse in the workplace that the older generation sort of normalized. There's a lot of toxic workplaces where the boss just did all kinds of things. You had management who were abusive, whether that be verbally, physically, all kinds of things. And the younger generation is not tolerating it anymore. And so I think that's a good thing. I think we need to have.
You think that's a good thing? Okay, but it certainly sounds as though you think the younger generation, I'm talking about Gen Z here, does have it harder. You've cited economic reasons, wages not keeping up with the cost of living, the cost of housing, for example. You would think that's a challenge, right?
That's definitely. That's if you can find a job. Most people are not even working in the degrees that they studied because there's not enough places hiring anymore. So it's all over the place, right? You know, you can have a degree, but you're working at McDonald's or Tim Hortons. Not there's anything wrong with working there, but you might as well have skipped school if that's where you're going to end up. You know what I mean? And then you end up with
it's very bleak. Your outlook is very bleak. No,
I think that what I'm looking forward to is more and more young people getting involved in the labor movement, joining.
Oh, really? Okay.
Organizing. I'm seeing more and more of that. And I see a lot of hope in that because we
all right.
Workers,
we've got some other callers to get to. It's actually starting to pick up here on this topic. Ifo, I thank you for your call. I'm not a union guy, but I'll say, solidarity to you. Thank you for your call. 1-833-668-2577. 3 lines available there, though. Where are we going next? Conrad in Red Deer, Alberta. Let's try Conrad here. See if Conrad is there. Hi, Conrad.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Conrad. Thanks for calling. What's your opinion on Gen Z? Okay,
I got 2 lines of thought. The first one on purpose. I'll never bash somebody for wanting to have purpose, But I would hope that they have a fine line between saving the world and being a little bit selfish, because, for example, for me, there was jobs I worked at that I would absolutely not be a part of, even though I made a half decent amount of money. I still focused on finding something that I was happy with and that I was willing to do.
Okay.
And then on my second line is I employ several Gen Zers, and I've had some of them work for me for 8 years, starting at 18 years old, and they all still live at home, and they are making upwards of $35 an hour. And I just wish I had that opportunity for myself to be able to bank or have that form of income for that many years. And there needs to be, I guess, some instruction of discipline for these youth to actually put their money into high interest savings accounts or save the money up, because yes, things are expensive, but at that, having that freedom and that luxury of being able to bank the money, you shouldn't complain after.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, what's a 1-bedroom in Red Deer going for, or what's a decent, even like a townhouse or something in Red Deer going for? Is it $300,000
for a townhouse?
Right.
Yeah. Cost of ownership, rent is $200,000. Yeah.
Okay.
$2,000 a month to rent a townhouse.
Maybe they are squirreling that money away, because that's the kind of money it's taking these days in a lot of the parts of the country, in order to get out there on your own and have a secure place to live, where you're not month to month thinking, oh my gosh, this is the last month I have a roof over my head. Am I going to be back with my parents or on the street, or whatever the case might be?
And, I think $35 to $38 an hour is a decent wage for somebody who
you would think. You're talking about $65,000, $66,000 a year.
Yes, that's correct. And with overtime, these guys are making $120,000, $130,000 a year. So it's just, I guess, purposely, and saying that there's not a lot of jobs out there. Hey, we're always hiring. We always want to get guys out here and working, and girls, and just it seems like you can go anywhere and get a job in Alberta right now. So.
Okay. All right, Conrad. Good to hear from you. Thanks for taking part in the conversation today. Really appreciate it. Be right back on Talkback. Hour number 2. Tell me about Gen Z. Tell me about Gen Z on Talkback today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's go to Red Deer and ask Aaron if he thinks the weather is any different than it used to be and more extreme. What do you think, Aaron?
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Aaron. What would you say?
Good. Well, I think it's interesting you mentioned earlier we're inundated with weather information. I think that's true. A couple years ago, Environment Canada took the historical weather data that was easily accessible on their website. They removed it, or made it much harder to access. And so on a hot summer day, if you'd look at the high temperature for the day, you could quickly reference the record recorded high for Alberta. And often those records were 1920s, 1930s, 1950s, 1960s. Same for cold weather. So I think we're inundated with weather information. However, I don't think we get the full picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have noticed that, because I used to do that all the time when I was doing morning radio. I would always look at, this is the daytime. What's the record for today? What's the record?
Absolutely.
Today? People are always curious about that kind of stuff, right? And I'm just on Environment Canada's website right here. I just typed in Ottawa weather, because that's the closest big city to me. And here it says, the normals for this time of year would be 25 degrees, 15 degrees overnight. Sunrise 6 in the morning, sunset tonight 8:14 p.m. And it used to say on a website like this, it used to say record high for today would be whatever, 30 degrees or whatever. And on in this year. It doesn't say that anymore. And now you're right. You got to go through
Right.
this whole database that they have, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so I think we're given a snapshot of our current day, whatever week, but you have no reference to what things may have been.
That's a good point.
I think that's helpful
Very interesting.
when you're trying to decipher information. Also, your other caller there mentioned, we've developed extensively around water, rivers, lakes. We have expensive vehicles, homes. I think we're more removed from the outdoors in a lot of ways than we used to be. So when you get a weather event, in some ways, I think we're less used to being, maybe a little bit of hardship. I think that type of thing was probably a lot less of a deal 30, 50, 80 years ago, people.
But just in your own experience, though, Aaron, in your own experience over the course of your lifetime, would you say you're experiencing more extreme weather now than you used to? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever?
I don't think extreme is an accurate way to put it. I think, like some of your other callers have put it, climates change. That's what they do. The weather, this year where I live, we've had, I'd say, quite a bit of rain, abnormally green for this time of year. We've had really virtually no smoke in the air. Where in the last 5-10 years, it seems like every year is smoky. So that's great. I don't know. I think we're sitting good here. In my reference, I don't think weather's more extreme than it used to be.
Thank you, Aaron, for your call and bringing that up about historical high temperatures and weather records. I'm a glutton for weather records, let me tell you. Glenn, I think, is up next. We take Glenn's call. Yeah, hi, Glenn. Yeah, go ahead, Glenn. What would you say?
Well, I have a little bit of an advantage. I lived on a farm and I visited a few weeks ago, and I looked at the record back to the 1920s. During periods of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, the average high temperature in the winter was minus 45 or above because the machine wouldn't go higher than 45. They recorded it. Now Celsius? That same area during the winter gets an average of 2 months that the average low is minus 25.
Oh, 25.
Now that's a hell of a bit different.
Oh, yeah,
of course, we're talking a Fahrenheit machine, so you'd have to
Fahrenheit.
adjust it.
Okay. All
and
right.
No records like that are found anywhere except on a farmer's situation. But I have noticed, I have lived in Alberta on 3 different occasions for more than 5 years each time, and there is more hailstorms right now and more heavy rainstorms. But in most cases, they're not as bad as they used to be. I saw a car demolished one time by a hailstorm that swept across the highway. Now, they get a lot of denting, but I haven't seen any pictures of any demolished recently. So,
well, big bills. The most recent hailstorm that they had in Calgary last year, that was a $3 billion storm. $3 billion.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
That was the one I got pebbling on my brand new vehicle.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, so you probably don't have fond memories of that. Well, thank you. Thank you again for the old farmer's perspective there. Appreciate it. Be right back with more of your calls. I think there may be 1 or 2 lines available there. It's been very busy on this topic today. Really appreciate the engagement. Be right back. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been talking about the weather today and asking, is the weather different now, more extreme now than you remember it being in the past? Certainly Environment Canada would say so. It's released multiple statements like that over the years. Here's one. Quote, although we cannot attribute a single weather event to human-caused climate change, the evidence is conclusive. We are experiencing more intense and more frequent extreme weather. Climate change is leading to more and more intense disasters. There are no new types of weather. Our grandparents cope with the same rain, heat, floods, fires, and drought. But the extremes are of a different nature than in the past. They are more widespread, intense, frequent, and impactful. Just throwing that out there. Rena in Halifax. Thanks for calling, Rena. You're on the air, Rena. Hi there.
Hi, can you hear me?
I hear you just fine, Rena. What would you say?
Okay. Well, with what you just read, that sounds pretty good. But I think that there is a change. The last 3 or 4 years has been really hot, more than normal. And I come from New Brunswick. I moved here in '63. And in New Brunswick, my sister said it's been 37. It's never been 37 in northern New Brunswick that I can remember. None of us.
Yeah.
And there are a lot more storms, a lot more. Yeah, but the heat is, I think the weather is very changing. If you remember, maybe in the 1900s, they were talking about the weather change. Well, no,
Okay.
you're too young. In the 1900s, they were saying, they were talking about the weather, and they said in the 2000 year, it could be 2020, 30, 40, I don't know, but in the 2000s, we would be able to grow oranges here.
Oh, okay.
The weather is going to flip. It's going to flip.
Yeah. Right.
And I think it's heading that way.
Oh, really? You think we're going to have orange groves in Bathurst, do you think, or what, Rena?
I think, I don't know, in maybe 2050, but they said in the 2000s they were. And I find the weather has changed. We don't even get as much snow as we used to. We get more rain in the winter than we do snow.
Okay. When
But
you
I
hear
don't
this
remember.
line, Rena, when you hear this line, extreme weather is the new normal. Do you think there's something to that? Extreme weather is the new normal.
I do agree with that, yes.
You do, yeah? Okay.
I do agree with it. Because my brother's in Toronto. He's noticed a big change.
Okay.
I've got my son in Vancouver. He's noticing a change, and my son in Saskatchewan. So they're all spread all over the place. And
they're all spread all across the place. Well, I mean, when you go to Toronto, I mean, I was in Toronto, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I guess. During the winter, you would never even know it was winter. I mean, it was above zero. There's no snow on the ground. Like the winter, like I'm talking like cold, harsh Canadian winter weather. That is a rarity now in Toronto.
It is. I was there maybe I was there before COVID, actually. And it was a very cold winter.
Okay.
It was a very cold winter. But yes, I do find that the weather is changing.
Okay.
It is
all right.
changing, definitely.
Well, I'm glad we could take another call from Atlantic Canada today because, of course, we've been talking about your weather with being it's so hot and dry and everything else. So I'm glad we could fit you in today. Thank you, Rena. But we will stop. We'll have to stop here, everyone. We've been so jam-packed all day. Thank you for waiting patiently while we get through all of your calls and hear all of your stories and all of your reflections on the weather. At 1-833-668-2577, the latest breaking news, including our weather forecast, is coming up next on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Been talking about the weather today on Talkback, asking you, is the weather different now than it used to be, more extreme than you remember it? And when you hear this line, extreme weather is the new normal. Is that true? Let's take a first-time caller in Calgary today. Tim is up next here on Talkback. Thanks for calling, Tim. You're on the air. What's your opinion, Tim? The weather different than it used to be?
Well, Rob, it's amazing to me that perceptions are so different from reality. You know, there's a group called the IPCC. I'm sure you've heard of them. They put
Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Yeah, sure.
You bet. They put out a report, AR6, Working Group 1. That's the scientists, by the way, not the politicians. They put out a study that shows that apart from heat waves, virtually all other forms of extreme weather have no trend or are trending down.
that would be trending down are tropical cyclones. Tornadoes in North America have been trending down from the highs in the 30s, etc. I mean, people have their perceptions, but where they get that from globally, on average,
okay,
there are no trends at all, and that's from the IPCC Working Group 1. I heard one of your callers, I think she was from Nova Scotia or New Brunswick, said it's 37 degrees. It's never been that hot there. Well, again, perception is one thing, reality is something else. I'm reading from a book here, Energy and Climate at a Glance, published by the Heartland Institute. It shows the maximum temperatures for PEI, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia happened in 1935, and they were 38.3, 39.4, and 36.7 degrees C. That's for Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI in that order. The 1920s had the highest temperatures for the Yukon, Newfoundland, and Quebec. Ontario's highest temperature happened in 1975. The highest temperatures across the prairies occurred in the 30s. The only places that have had record temperatures lately are the Northwest Territories and BC, which had their highest temperatures in 2021.
Okay.
Perception.
Let me read you this. I've pulled, if you don't mind, Tim, if you don't mind. I've pulled several quotes here from statements that Environment Canada has made in the past when it has released reports on weather. Here's another one, okay? Let me get your take on this. I'm going to quote here. Weather changes in Canada are happening abruptly, not subtly, rapidly, not gradually. As Canadians continue to experience more and more extreme weather, intense month-long heat waves, suffocating smoke and haze from wildfires, and extreme flooding, this will simply be the norm decades from now. Events that were once rare or unusual for our grandparents are now more commonplace. While we all become more vulnerable to extreme weather, Canadians must become more resilient, not only for what lies ahead, but also for the variations in climate which are already here. That's Environment Canada. They study the weather in Canada.
Well, they do study the weather, but I worry that they also have an agenda, because what you've just quoted there is completely at odds with Professor Pilkey Jr. in Colorado has come up with. He's got all kinds of trends that show that actually agree with what the IPCC.
What about in your own life? I've been asking people about their own experiences. In your own life experience, you notice any change in the weather? Is it hotter than it used to be? More storms, more powerful storms than you used to experience in your life? No?
Well, I would agree with the perception, because the most recent experiences always seem to cloud out what's happened in the past. That's why it's better to go back and look at the actual statistics than people's perception. And as I said, I can't comment on where Environment Canada got their stuff, but it's at odds with what I said from Roger Pilkey Jr. and also what the IPCC Working Group 1 found.
All right. Tim, you've had your say, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to, I believe we're going to Woodstock, Ontario, perhaps most famously known as being the hometown of the producer of this radio show, one Curtis Giroux. I believe they have a statue of him outside the town square. Kathy is in Woodstock. How are you, Kathy?
I'm okay. I'm a grandmother, and I grew up on a farm.
All right.
And I will be talking about this from growing food for animals and people to eat.
All right.
The weather has a huge impact on that. I started complaining over 20 years ago of what it was doing to my vegetable garden. You get too much rain, heavy rain, it washes the seeds away. You have to replant it. Farmers have crops that wash out, or else it's so dry that nothing grows right, and you have to water it. It is messing up local food production. It is messing up food for livestock, and this isn't just happening here in Canada. Different types of foods are becoming impossible to get because of weather changes going on. The weather gets stuck. When it's hot, it's hot. 30, 40 years ago in southern Ontario, you had 3 days of hot weather, it would go away. Doesn't do that anymore. the weather would go from west to east, keep moving. It doesn't do that anymore. It gets stuck, and it sits around and creates havoc for a long time. And that's what I really have a problem with.
Okay. So there's no doubt in your mind then that the weather is different than it used to be, more extreme than it used to be?
Yeah. If it's dry, it's too wet. It's too much of everything. When it's wet, it's too wet. When it's dry, it's too dry. When it's hot, it's too hot. We used to get winter storms that would go low, that would go right through the province of Ontario from west to east and be gone. We don't get many of those anymore. They come up from the south, and they're Texas lows or Colorado lows, and they dump heavy wet snow on parts of the province. So it isn't a general snowfall covering large area. We get more lake effect with wind, and if you're where the snow falls, you get a lot, and if you're not there, well, you don't get much. We get more rain in the winter. Sure, we have cold winters, not like they used to be. But I'm talking about growing food, and you talk to an old-fashioned farmer who's been on the fields for years, and they will tell you it is much more challenging now. And for those that are talking about the 20s and the 30s, my parents were farming back then. And I heard all the stories about what was going on during the dirty 30s. And you know how people lived back then, even in the city? They had their own backyards in a vegetable garden. They grew their own food. And you didn't have the luxury of having an orange. You didn't get all types of fruit seasonal. You had a fruit cellar. You lived off of what you could grow on the land. And we have changed so much since then. And the weather we have now is actually, I can see it reducing our ability to grow enough food to feed ourselves in the future. My garden didn't produce the last 5 years nearly as good as it should have, and it's totally because of the weather mucking it up.
All right,
There
Kathy, thank you. Very passionate opinion. I appreciate that opinion. Thank you so much. Be right back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Well, we've been talking about the weather and whether the weather is different now. Whether people have thought, gosh, I just don't remember weather like this. Whether the weather is more extreme than you remember it being in the past. And whether extreme weather is the new normal. Hear that from time to time. Still time to fit you in here. 1-833-668-2577 on the Wednesday Talkback. Anand in Calgary. Anand, thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Rob. Thanks for having me on. How are you this afternoon?
Good to hear from you. I'm just fine, thank you. What would you say?
Yeah, so actually I've lived in parts of India and Dubai, so I'm not opposed to like the heat weather, so that's not bad. Right now I'm in Calgary, so that's not bad. But the rain that we have been happening lately, I believe that's extreme. I'll give you one example. I was in India last year during vacation, during the monsoon season in India. It was during August. We had only one rainy day compared to here. Now in Calgary, we have had almost rainy days almost every day, except like 1 or 2 days in Calgary. So I would say in that trend, the weather has gone extreme here in Calgary. Also the snow as well, it has gotten colder. We have gotten like days with minus 40 here or so. So I would say in Calgary compared to like India and Dubai, the weather has gotten extreme.
Okay. When you hear this, extreme weather is the new normal now. Hear this from time to time. Do you think that's true? Do you think there's any truth to that?
Yeah, I believe so because each day is different. You can, especially here in Calgary, if you get a rainstorm, 10 minutes later you get sunny again. Then you might get another hailstorm towards the end of the evening. So I think, extreme is the new normal is the right phrase to use.
All right, Anand, thank you for your call. Again, good to hear from you. All the best to you. I could just tell you here in this part of the country, Eastern Ontario, West Quebec, it was so cold this winter, and we had so much snow this winter. I told my wife, I said, honey, no matter how hot it gets this summer, I'm not going to complain about the heat. And, you know, that old line, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because, man, oh, man, it has been just smoking hot in these parts. As I've mentioned in recent days, really, really dry. And the provincial fire authorities here, they have our fire warning system. It's set to extreme. And we do have a fire ban in effect. People are still allowed to go into the woods, unlike Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, but we have a fire ban in effect. And it's been very smoky, very, very smoky. It rained for a couple of hours this morning. That was the first rain we've had in weeks. I mowed the lawn just after I got back from vacation. I guess that's about 3 weeks ago now. I haven't needed to touch it since, and it doesn't look like it's grown an inch. And why would I mow? It's all brown anyway. It's all brown. And that followed, I'll have to tell you, a pretty epic winter. I mean, old-fashioned Canadian winter doesn't even do it justice. I mean, for weeks on end, it seemed like it was minus 20. And there was so much snow. I have a little ATV that has a plow on the front of it. Twice this winter, there was so much snow in my driveway, my ATV with the plow on the front got stuck. And one time it got so stuck, I had to get my neighbor down the street who has a big tractor to come up and pull me out. And I'm telling you, by the end of the winter, I mean, there was so much snow, we were pretty much out of room. I mean, there was just no place to put it. Is that normal? I don't know. I'm in my mid-50s. I've seen all kinds of winter. I've seen all kinds of summer. A couple of years ago, it was so cold and rainy here, we barely had a summer at all. Sounds like a Calgary summer this year. And the winter before last was pretty tame. We had almost no snow to speak of. But in this part of the country, not far from your nation's capital, Ottawa, the weather people are saying that here, it's been the hottest, driest summer in 12 years. In 12 years. That's what it's been like around here. Is it different? Sometimes it seems different. It really does. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. Love to hear from you in the final few minutes that we have today. Get in a last-minute comment, if you will, at 1-833-668-2577 here on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Asking about the weather today, and is it different than it used to be? More extreme than you remember it being in the past? Is extreme weather the new normal? Alan is in Lethbridge, calling from Lethbridge. Thank you for calling, Alan. Hey, what would you
Rob.
say?
I would put it this way. I'm 67 years old, and I've seen 50 above to 50 below, and I think we're just evolving. There's no real big change. I remember missing school for 6 weeks in the summertime and springtime, and I mean, I think people got soft and short-term memories. With the weather's the weather. It's always going to change. I don't think there's any climate change or anything. It's just we're in evolving North American weather patterns. It's going to change.
Okay.
So
when you hear this, extreme weather is the new normal. You think that's true?
We had extreme weather. We've had extreme weather for 60. As long as I can remember, there's been extreme weather in one way or another, whether it be tornadoes or floods or hot spells. I mean, 18 years ago, I attended something down in Saskatchewan back home, and it got to be 49 degrees that day. We were the hottest place on the planet. I mean, this is North America. Yeah, is that strange? It's very strange, but
very strange.
It just broke record. That's all, and we're going to keep breaking records as we go because we really only keep these records for the last 100 or so years. We don't know what happened before this.
That's true. Yeah,
we don't know. We don't have a darn clue. This Earth is way too old for us to make a decision. Things are changing, and it's a drastic change. It's going to change. Tomorrow's going to change. Next month's going to change, and next year's going to change.
Right. And it's no different.
You know what I mean?
And it's no different. You don't think it's any different now? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad we get your take in Lethbridge. That's been a popular opinion today. It sure has. Back to Southern Ontario and Frank. Hi, Frank.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Make it as quick as I can. Not much time.
Sure.
I'm an old timer, well into my 70s, and so it's an interesting topic. And memory and perception versus science and all that kind of stuff. But I would say yes, more extreme. But the term I would use in all my observations is the variability is extreme.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
It changes so quickly compared to the past. We had more consistent weather patterns, like one day it's this, one day it's that, or, it's a shorter duration. We had an extreme winter in the Bruce Peninsula this last winter. I had 13 feet of snow. Year before, we had 2 feet of snow. But I think, and my memory and perception, of course, is limited in terms of memory, but that variability to me is very obvious. So that's the point I wanted to make.
And you have made it, and you've made it well. And thank you so much. You'll get the last word on Talkback today. My gosh, that was a very enjoyable couple of hours talking about one of our obsessions, I think, in this country, the weather. So we'll be back tomorrow with a brand new topic, maybe even more than one. Who knows? And we'll take a lot more of your calls. And as always, we will bring you the latest breaking news. That's coming up next, including your weather forecast. I'm Rob Snow. This has been Now You Know and Talkback. This is News Radio.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.